Ian stood quietly outside the tall glass building, watching people rush in and out with expensive clothes, shiny watches, and confident faces. It was the headquarters of his family's business empire, Khan Global Group, a company known for its wealth, power, and pride. But for Ian, this place was full of memories that were not always happy. He wore a simple shirt, old shoes, and carried a small bag. Anyone looking at him would think he was just a delivery boy or a low-level worker. And that was exactly what people around him assumed. A security guard at the door gave him a quick glance, then looked away, thinking Ian had no business entering such a place. Ian didn't mind. He was used to this. For years he had heard his own family say, "Ian is too poor for business. He doesn't understand money. He should stay away from serious discussions." Every time those words hit him, he chose silence over anger. Today, however, things were different. Ian took a deep breath, pushed open the glass door, and stepped into the giant lobby. Crystal lights shined from above, expensive furniture decorated the hall, and people walked around with importance in their eyes. The receptionist, a young woman with bright red lipstick, looked up and frowned slightly when she saw him. "Yes?" she asked in a cold tone. "Can I help you?" Ian smiled politely. "I'm here for the board meeting." She almost laughed. "For investors only, sir." "Yes," Ian said calmly. "I know." The receptionist raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. She checked him from head to toe, judging everything: the simple shirt, the cheap shoes, the old bag. He didn't look like someone who could invest even $100, let alone attend a multi-million-dollar business meeting. Still, he didn't argue. He simply waited. Behind him, two businessmen in suits walked in. The receptionist immediately stood up straight and greeted them with a bright smile. Ian moved aside politely. The men didn't even look at him. To them, he was invisible. Ian slowly walked toward the elevator. As he reached the meeting floor, he heard loud laughter echoing from the conference room. Familiar voices. Voices that once hurt him. Voices that still hurt him. He stood outside the door for a moment, listening. Inside, his cousins were laughing loudly. "Ian? In business?" One cousin shouted. "Please? The guy can't even afford a proper suit," another mocked. "He is poor, simple, and useless," a third cousin said proudly. "Poor people can't understand business," the uncle declared. "Ian should never come near the company." Everyone at the table laughed. Ian closed his eyes for a moment, not to cry but to breathe. He had heard these words so many times that he had lost count. But today something inside him felt different. He felt stronger, calmer, more in control. He opened his eyes and stepped away from the door so they wouldn't see him listening. Suddenly, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out slowly and a single important message showed on the screen. "Your $250 million investment has been transferred successfully." Ian's heart beat a little faster. This was the moment he had kept hidden for years. He quickly locked the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. No one inside the meeting knew the truth. No one in his family knew the truth. They thought he was still the quiet, poor boy from years ago. They thought he was nothing. They thought he had no future. And they were wrong. Ian looked at the closed conference room door again. His family was inside, mocking him, laughing at him, calling him poor, while they desperately needed an investor to save their dying company. They were weeks away from collapse. They were begging for investors. No one was willing to help them. Except Ian. Ian, the one they insulted. Ian, the one they rejected. Ian, the one they believed was worthless. He took a deep breath and stepped inside the room. The laughter stopped immediately. Every head turned toward him. His uncle stared at him with surprise and irritation. "Ian? What are you doing here?" "This meeting is for investors only." His cousins smirked. One whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe he came to deliver tea." Another laughed, "Or maybe he got lost." Ian stayed calm. His face didn't show any anger, any pain, any emotion. He simply said in a quiet but confident voice, "I'm here for the meeting." His uncle crossed his arms. "This is not for you. Poor people don't belong in business discussions. Please leave." Ian looked at his uncle, slowly, gently, like a person who has heard the same insult too many times. But before he could respond, the door behind him opened again. A man in a black suit walked in. Everyone in the room straightened up. The family thought the important mystery investor had arrived. They quickly fixed their clothes, adjusted their ties, and put on fake smiles. The man walked past all of them and stopped right beside Ian. "Sir," he said respectfully to Ian, "your investment documents are ready." Everyone's eyes widened. The room fell silent. Ian remained calm. He simply nodded. And in that moment, his family realized something was wrong. Something big. Something shocking. They looked at Ian differently now. Their faces changed. Who was he really? Why did the lawyer call him sir? What was he hiding? Why was he in the meeting? And the biggest question of all, was Ian, the $250 million investor? The suspense grew heavier in the room. Ian didn't reveal anything yet. He just said softly, "Let's start the meeting." Ian took a seat at the corner of the large conference table. His movements were slow and calm, almost silent. He didn't try to fight for attention, didn't interrupt anyone, didn't demand respect. He simply sat like he always did, quiet, patient, and invisible. But today there was something different in his eyes. A soft confidence. A quiet strength. His family noticed it, but pretended not to. His uncle cleared his throat loudly, trying to regain control of the room. "Everyone ignore the disturbance. Let's continue." He shot a sharp look at Ian. "You can stay but keep quiet." The cousins smirked again. One whispered loudly, "He always stays quiet. What else can he do?" Ian heard everything. He always heard everything. But he didn't respond. The man in the black suit, Ian's lawyer, Mr. Daniels, sat beside him, placing a large black folder on the table. The family stared at the folder like it held dangerous secrets. In truth it did. Ian's uncle finally tried to act important again. He stood tall and addressed the room. "As you all know," he said proudly, "our company has been approached by a major investor. A very powerful one. A man with extreme wealth." The cousins nodded with big smiles, acting proud as if they had earned this opportunity. Ian quietly listened. His uncle continued, "This investor will save our business. He will bring $250 million. The room clapped loudly. Ian didn't clap. He simply watched. His uncle lifted his chin. "This is the biggest opportunity our family has ever received. And we must show our investor that we are professional people. Successful people. Not poor people." The uncle's eyes shifted toward Ian. The insult was clear. Everyone noticed. Ian simply folded his hands on the table. His cousin Farhan laughed. Yes, yes. We must keep poor-looking people away from the investor. He might think our family is weak." Another cousin added, "Imagine if he sees Ian. He will run away." The whole room laughed. Except Ian. Except Mr. Daniels. And except one junior employee standing in the back who looked shocked by how rude they were. Ian stared at the table not because he felt weak, but because he didn't want anyone to see the small smile forming on his lips. A smile that said, "They have no idea who I truly am." His uncle clapped his hands again to quiet the room. "We must prepare a perfect presentation. The investor must see us as intelligent and classy." Farhan leaned forward. "Uncle, should we send Ian outside? Investors won't take us seriously if he stays here." His uncle nodded slowly. "Yes, I think." But before he finished speaking, Mr. Daniels suddenly opened the black folder. The sound of the folder opening cut through the room like a knife. Everyone turned to look. Inside the folder were documents with gold seals, legal papers, and financial forms that looked extremely important. The uncle stared at them suspiciously. "What is this?" he asked. Mr. Daniels didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at Ian respectfully. Ian nodded once. Mr. Daniels cleared his throat. "These are the official investment papers." Everyone's eyes widened. The cousins leaned forward. The uncle's mouth fell slightly open. No one blinked. Mr. Daniels continued professionally, "These documents contain the identity of the investor, and the terms he has agreed to." The uncle's face lit up. His greed was obvious. "Yes, yes. Please show me the name of this powerful man." Ian quietly watched his uncle's excitement. His heart felt heavy, not because of their behavior but because he finally saw the truth. They valued money more than they valued him. They respected wealth, not character. They respected investors, not family. Ian had always known this, but today he could see it clearly. Mr. Daniels placed the documents face down on the table, keeping the name hidden. The uncle impatiently reached forward. "Reveal it." Mr. Daniels stopped him gently. "Before I reveal the name, I must inform everyone of something important." The room fell silent. The uncle frowned. "What now?" Mr. Daniels looked at Ian once again, asking silently, "Should I continue?" Ian gave a small nod. Mr. Daniels turned to the family. His voice grew firm. "The investor is someone you all know very well." A shock ran through the room. Farhan whispered, "Someone we know?" Another cousin gasped, "Is it Uncle's business friend?" "No," Mr. Daniels replied calmly. It is someone far closer. The uncle's eyes grew sharp. Oh, who is it? Mr. Daniels slowly picked up the top document and flipped it over. The family leaned forward, eyes wide, breath shallow. But instead of revealing the name, Mr. Daniels said, "This investor has watched you all for years." Silence. "This investor has seen your decisions, your choices, and your behavior." Another silence. "And this investor has silently supported your company when no one else would." A cousin whispered nervously, "Who could that be?" Mr. Daniels looked around the room, then pointed, not at the paper, not at the board, but at Ian. Every head turned in shock. Mr. Daniels said clearly, "The investor is in this room." Ian stayed still. Still silent. Still calm. His family stared at him like the world had stopped moving. The uncle's voice broke. "Ian? Why is he pointing at you?" Ian finally lifted his eyes. And for the first time there was no fear. No pain. No sadness in his face. Only truth. Only strength. Only power. For a long moment nobody moved. The room felt frozen. Ian sat quietly in his chair, his hands folded neatly in front of him. His face calm, almost peaceful. But inside the room nothing was calm. There was panic, fear, confusion, and anger, each emotion running wild inside every member of his family. Farhan was the first one to break the silence. He pointed at Ian with a shaky finger. He cannot be the investor. This must be a joke." His voice cracked. His confidence was gone. Another cousin shook his head aggressively. No, this is impossible. He doesn't even have a proper job." Aunt Sarah leaned forward, whispering loudly, "He still lives in a small apartment. How can he be an investor of $250 million? The entire room buzzed with disbelief. Ian didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. He simply sat there like someone who had already accepted the truth long before they did. Mr. Daniels finally spoke calmly, "I said the investor is in this room. I did not say it was him." The room fell silent again. Every head snapped toward Mr. Daniels. Farhan exhaled loudly. "Thank God. I knew it. Ian could never." Mr. Daniels raised one hand. "But I also said, the investor is someone you all know well." Suspicion started moving around the room like a shadow. Everyone looked at each other. The uncle looked at his brother. The cousins looked at each other. Aunt Sarah raised her eyebrows at her husband. One cousin whispered, "Maybe it's uncle himself?" The uncle puffed his chest proudly. "Yes, maybe it is me. After all, I am the head of this family." Mr. Daniels shook his head firmly. "It is not you." The uncle's pride collapsed instantly. A cousin turned to Ian again. "But then, why did he point toward Ian earlier?" Mr. Daniels replied simply, "Because Ian is connected to the investor more than anyone else in this room." Every cousin's mouth dropped open. "Connected? More than anyone?" The uncle leaned forward angrily. "What do you mean by connected? He's the least important person here." Mr. Daniels didn't raise his voice. He didn't lose control. He simply slid another document in front of him. "I will explain," he said quietly. "But I want you all to listen carefully." The family leaned forward. Their eyes locked on the folder. Mr. Daniels began. "The investor who wants to help your company has been watching you for many years." The cousin swallowed hard. "This investor understands your family very deeply." The uncle's face tightened. "And unlike many people," he continued, "this investor believes in loyalty, kindness, and gratitude." A tense silence filled the room. Ian lowered his eyes again, not out of shame but because every word felt painfully true. He had always believed in loyalty. Always believed in kindness. Always believed in helping the family, even when they never helped him. His family, on the other hand, they only believed in power. The uncle broke the silence with frustration. "This is ridiculous. Why speak in riddles? Just tell us the name." Mr. Daniels nodded slowly. "I will. But first I must tell you what kind of person this investor chose to trust." Everyone leaned closer. "This investor values people who remain humble," he said. "People who don't brag. People who work quietly. People who stay soft even when life is hard." The cousins exchanged confused looks. They had never lived like that. They had never been humble. "But most important," Mr. Daniels continued, "the investor trusts people who stay loyal, even when others mistreat them." The uncle looked irritated. "Why are you saying all this? We don't care about the personality of the investor. Just tell us the name." A small smile grew on Mr. Daniels' face. "Because," he said slowly, "the personality is the clue." The cousins looked at Ian again. this time with a hint of fear. Mr. Daniels tapped the folder. This investor secretly helped your business survive during its worst years. The cousins gasped. The uncle whispered, our worst years? But that was before Ian came back to the family. How would he know? Ian lifted his eyes at that moment. He said softly, because I was watching. The room fell completely still. His voice, gentle, calm, polite, sent a wave of fear through them. The uncle snapped, you were watching? Watching what? Ian looked down at his hands. I watched how you treated me. I watched how you treated each other. I watched how the company almost collapsed. And I watched how desperate you became. Aunt Sarah covered her mouth. Farhan's face turned pale. Ian continued, his voice steady. I watched everything. Silently. A cousin whispered, why didn't you say anything? Ian looked at him with tired eyes. Because nobody listens to me. Silence. Painful. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Mr. Daniels continued from where Ian stopped. The investor remained silent for a reason. He wanted to see how this family treats people who have less. How they treat someone they believe is poor. How they treat someone innocent. He looked around the table. And I must say, the investor was not impressed. Everyone shifted nervously in their seats. The uncle tried to regain control. This is nonsense. Our family is kind. Our family is respectful. Mr. Daniels raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Because earlier today, I witnessed you mocking a member of your own family, calling him useless, calling him poor, telling him he doesn't belong here. The cousins lowered their heads slightly. Guilt started creeping in. The uncle shouted, he ruins everything. He embarrassed us. Mr. Daniels calmly replied, no, he has been protecting you. More than anyone in this room realizes. The room went silent again. Mr. Daniels slowly lifted the first page of the document, revealing the first half of the investor's name. Everyone leaned forward. A gasp spread across the room. It wasn't the full name yet. Just one part. But it was enough to shock them. The uncle choked out, this looks familiar. Mr. Daniels nodded. Yes. The investor shares something very important with Ian. The air grew thicker. The cousins stopped breathing. Ian sat silently again, his expression unreadable. The truth was closing in on them. But they still didn't know how close. And the shock waiting in part 4 would change everything. The room was so quiet that even the sound of a paper shifting felt loud. Everyone stared at the half-revealed name on the document. Their eyes widened. Their bodies stiffened. Their breathing stopped. The uncle leaned closer, squinting his eyes as if reading something impossible. That looks like... His voice cracked. Farhan finished the sentence in shock. It looks like our family name. A sudden electric panic passed across the room. One cousin stood up. Another stepped back. Aunt Sarah pressed her hands to her chest. Why is our family name on this paper? She asked with fear. Mr. Daniels looked around the room slowly. It is there for a reason. The uncle slammed his hand on the table. Explain. Now. Mr. Daniels didn't lose his calm. He said, I told you, the investor is someone all of you know very well. Farhan stuttered, is it one of us? A cousin whispered, maybe I invested something without knowing? It sounded foolish even to them. Mr. Daniels shook his head. No. None of you have the financial capacity to be the investor. Not even close. Their faces twisted in embarrassment. The uncle forced a laugh. Then why is our family name here if none of us are the investor? Mr. Daniels placed the paper flat on the table. It appears because the investor belongs to your bloodline. Silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence. Their eyes slowly, unwillingly, turned to Ian. Ian didn't move. He just breathed slowly, his expression calm but tired. A cousin whispered fearfully, Is Ian related to the investor? Another cousin added, or maybe he knows him personally? The uncle scoffed. Ridiculous. Ian knows no one important. Ian's eyes lifted slightly. Just slightly. Mr. Daniels finally spoke again. Before I reveal the second half of the name, you must understand something. Everyone waited. The investor did not choose your business because it is special, he said plainly. And he did not choose your family because you are talented. The uncle's pride collapsed instantly. What? How dare? Mr. Daniels raised a hand to silence him. He chose this business for one reason only. He turned and looked at Ian. Ian lowered his eyes again. Because he knew what was coming. Because he had lived this truth for years. Mr. Daniels said clearly, He chose this business to protect him. The room shook with shock. Farhan's face twisted. Ayan? Why would the investor protect him? He's the weakest one. Aunt Sarah added, he is the poorest. Why protect him? Mr. Daniels responded sharply. You're wrong. Very wrong. The cousins looked confused, scared, angry, everything at once. Mr. Daniels continued, there is something none of you know. Something that changes everything about Ayan. The uncle leaned forward, suddenly sweating. What secret? What are you talking about? Ayan finally exhaled deeply. Not because he was afraid, but because hiding this for years had been heavy, and now that weight was almost ready to fall. Mr. Daniels turned another page. This page showed a list, timestamps, wire transfers, financial movements. He tapped the top line. These are the first transfers the investor made into your failing company 8 years ago. Farhan frowned. 8 years? But Ayan wasn't even working then. He was studying abroad. The room froze. Studying abroad? Yes, but not like they thought. Mr. Daniels nodded. And during that time, the investor became extremely successful. Quietly. Silently. No media. No interviews. No bragging. Ayan closed his eyes for a moment. His success had never been loud. Never been public. Never been understood. The uncle shouted, stop speaking like this. Tell us who the investor is. Mr. Daniels leaned back in his chair. Your investor trusted one person to watch your family, to observe your behavior, to learn your character. His eyes moved to Ayan again. That person was Ayan. Now the room felt like it was spinning. A cousin yelled, then why didn't he tell us anything? Ayan's voice came softly. Because none of you would have believed me. Another cousin shouted, but why you? Why were you chosen? Ayan looked at the documents quietly. Mr. Daniels answered for him. Because the investor has known Ayan the longest. The uncle snapped, how? And then, finally, Mr. Daniels lifted the next page. The second half of the investor's name appeared. A gasp exploded across the room. The cousin stepped back. The uncle's face turned white. Aunt Sarah dropped her purse on the floor. The name was unmistakable. Familiar. Personal. Connected. It wasn't just the family name. It was Ayan's first name. The document read, Investor, Ayan under... Their Ayan. The Ayan they mocked. The Ayan they insulted. The Ayan they called poor. The uncle's voice trembled. This must be fake. But deep down, they all knew it wasn't. They stared at him, this quiet, humble, simple man, like they were seeing him for the first time. But the shock wasn't over. Not even close. Because they still didn't know the full story. They still didn't know how he earned $250 million. They still didn't know why he kept it secret. They still didn't know what he planned to do next. And part 5 would break them completely. The room felt colder than before. No one spoke. No one moved. No one even blinked. They just stared at the name on the paper. Ayan's name, printed in bold, official, legal text. The same Ayan they mocked. The same Ayan they ignored. The same Ayan they called poor. The uncle's face had lost all color. His hands shook as he tried to laugh it off. This is not real. This must be a mistake. Someone used his name. His voice cracked. He sounded like a man drowning, searching for a rope that didn't exist. Mr. Daniels spoke calmly. It is not a mistake. Your investor is Ayan. Aunt Sarah shook her head quickly. No. He can't even buy himself a new phone. How can he have millions? Ayan finally spoke, softly but firmly. I didn't buy a new phone because I didn't need one. Farhan stepped forward, his voice trembling with anger, fear, and jealousy. You're lying. Stop lying. You've never shown success. You've never shown money. Ayan looked at him with tired eyes. Because I never wanted to show it. The cousins grew quiet. They had spent years trying to show off, new cars, branded clothes, expensive vacations, just to prove they were successful. And the one person who never showed anything was the most successful of all. The uncle slammed the table again, trying to regain control. Enough. I demand a proof. Ayan, if you are really this rich investor, tell us how you got that money. Ayan inhaled deeply. For years this story had been his alone. A story he never shared because he knew they would never understand. But now, the truth was standing at their door, waiting to be spoken. Mr. Daniels answered before Ayan could. Ayan started learning business when he was very young, much younger than any of you knew. The uncle snorted. Learning business? Where? From who? He had nothing. Mr. Daniels ignored him. He studied online. Quietly. Late at night. Every night. While all of you slept. The cousins blinked. They remembered something. Years ago, Ian was always awake. Always tired. Always sitting alone with his laptop. They laughed at him for that. Called him unemployed. Called him jobless. Mr. Daniels continued. He learned trading, real estate, tech startups, and investment strategies. And when he went abroad for studies, he used every small opportunity to grow his money. Aunt Sarah whispered, "Grow his money? How?" He had nothing. Ian finally lifted his eyes. "I started with $50. The cousins gasped. "50? $50? That's impossible." But Mr. Daniels nodded. He turned $50 into 5,000. 5,000 into 50,000. And from there, his growth never stopped. A silence filled with disbelief spread across the room. The uncle tried to stand tall again. "You expect us to believe he made millions on his own?" Mr. Daniels replied calmly. "Yes. Because Ian is not just an investor, he is a financial genius." The words hit the family like a storm. A genius? Our Ian? The quiet one? The shy one? The one we never respected? Ian's silence was louder than their questions. Mr. Daniels continued. By the time Ian finished his studies abroad, he had already built 3 successful businesses. 2 were sold. 1 grew internationally. A cousin whispered, "That means he was rich years ago?" Ian nodded slightly. "Yes." A second cousin asked, "Then why didn't you tell us?" Ian's eyes softened with pain. "Because you never cared to ask." Those words hurt more than anything. A heavy silence fell over the room. Ian continued, his voice calm but full of hidden wounds. "You only cared about money when you needed it. But when I needed help, when I needed support, when I needed someone to believe in me, all I received was laughter." His cousins lowered their heads. His uncle clenched his fists, but he didn't deny it. Ian kept speaking. "When the company was failing 8 years ago, I saw it. I saw how stressed everyone was. I saw the panic, the fear, the desperation." He looked at his uncle. "And even though you treated me like I didn't matter, I still couldn't watch the family fall apart." Aunt Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes, "You saved us? Without telling us." I nodded. "Yes." Farhan's voice shook. "Why? Why would you help people who never helped you?" Ian looked at him calmly. "Because I believed family should stand together, even when the family doesn't stand with you." The room fell silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disbelief. It wasn't laughter. It was guilt. A deep, choking guilt. The uncle finally swallowed hard and spoke softly, almost whispering. "Ian, why did you come today? Why reveal the truth now?" Ian looked around the room slowly. Because the moment had finally come. Because the family needed to hear what he was about to say. And because the truth was bigger than all of them. He placed his hands on the table and spoke with a calm strength they had never seen before. "I came today because I am not just your investor." He paused. Everyone leaned forward. Ian looked straight into his uncle's eyes. "I am now the majority owner of this company." The entire room exploded in shock. His family had no idea. Part 6 would reveal what this meant, and how everything they thought they controlled was now in his hands. The shock inside the room was so strong that it felt like the air had disappeared. Everyone stared at Ian with wide, stunned eyes. The quiet, simple man they ignored, the man they laughed at, the man they called poor, was suddenly telling them, "I am the majority owner of this company." No one could understand how such a sentence could be real. The uncle was the first to react. He stumbled back into his chair as if someone had pushed him. Majority owner?" he whispered. His voice sounded broken. A cousin shook his head again and again. No, this cannot be. This company belongs to our family." Ian looked at him calmly. "I am part of this family." For the first time that sentence didn't sound weak. It sounded powerful. Too powerful. Another cousin shouted, "But how? How can you own more shares than all of us?" Mr. Daniels opened another folder and slid a document across the table. "These," he said, "are the share purchase agreements from the past 8 years." 8 years. The room froze again. Farhan grabbed one of the pages, his hands shaking. "These signatures, these dates, these amounts, this is real?" Mr. Daniels nodded. "Very real." The uncle snatched another paper, scanning it quickly. I didn't sell him my shares." Mr. Daniels corrected him politely. "No. You sold your shares to the investor." The uncle blinked, confused. But the investor was anonymous. I didn't know it was Ian. Mr. Daniels replied. That was the point. The cousins gasped again. Ian had slowly, quietly, calmly bought their company out from under them. One broken year at a time. One desperate moment at a time. One anonymous investment at a time. Aunt Sarah whispered in disbelief. So, all this time, when we thought a stranger was saving us. Her voice cracked. It was you. Ian nodded, his face soft but firm. Yes. For years he watched them struggle. He watched them panic. He watched them make bad decisions. And every time they needed saving, they unknowingly sold him more and more of the company. Not because they trusted him, but because they never respected him enough to know who he truly was. Now he owned everything they valued. The uncle suddenly slammed the table in anger. This is wrong. This is manipulation. You tricked us. Ian looked straight at him. You tricked me first. For years. Silence. Painful and sharp. Ian continued, his voice steady. You told everyone I was useless. You told me I had nothing. You said I would never succeed. The uncle looked away. Ian's voice grew deeper, calmer, stronger. You took away my confidence. You took away my ideas. You pushed me out of the family business, because you thought I wasn't good enough. Farhan opened his mouth, but Ian cut him off. And when the company was failing, when banks refused to help you, when everyone else walked away, he pointed to his own chest. I stayed. No one spoke. Ian's voice softened, but the pain behind it was visible. I stayed, even when you never stayed for me. Aunt Sarah wiped her eyes. A cousin whispered, Ian, we didn't know. We didn't understand. Ian nodded. I know. And that's why I didn't reveal myself then. If I told you I was the investor, you would have listened, but not out of respect. He looked around the room one by one. You would have listened because of money. The guilt on their faces was clear. Ian continued, I never wanted power. I never wanted control. I only wanted the family to succeed. And now, Mr. Daniels added, he has the legal authority to choose what happens next. Those words hit the room like lightning. The uncle panicked. What do you mean what happens next? This is our company. Mr. Daniels tapped the documents. Ian owns 63% of the shares. A cousin gasped loudly. 63? And Sarah whispered, that means he controls everything. Ian said quietly, yes, every decision, every appointment, every future plan. The uncle stood up suddenly, voice rising in fear. You can't do this. You can't take my company away. Ian looked at him with sad eyes. You lost it long before I owned it. You lost it the day you stopped respecting your own people. The uncle froze. Ian continued, I didn't take this company from you. You gave it up, one signature at a time, because you cared more about money than family. His words were simple, but they cut deeper than any insult. A cousin suddenly knelt beside Ian's chair. Ian, please, don't destroy us. Don't push us out. I am sorry. Another cousin added, we can change. We will respect you now. We promise. But Ian shook his head gently. I don't want your respect because you fear me. I want respect because you see my worth. The room went silent again. Mr. Daniels spoke softly. Ian must now decide the future of this company. Every face turned toward him. Their fear was visible. Their guilt was heavy. Their pride was gone. Ian closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. Because the next decision would change everything. Not just for him. Not just for the company. But for the entire family. And in part 7, Ian will reveal his final decision. One they never expected. The room was filled with a deep, painful silence. Everyone waited. Everyone watched Ian. Everyone feared what he might say. He sat there with his hands folded, eyes calm but serious. This was the moment the whole family once controlled. But now everything depended on him. Ian finally took a slow breath. I never wanted this, he said quietly. I never wanted power, control, or revenge. Farhan swallowed hard. A cousin whispered, then, what do you want? Ian looked up. I want a family. The sentence hit the room like a soft thunder, quiet but impossible to ignore. He continued, I wanted a family who respected me, who supported me, who believed in me. But instead, he looked around the table, his voice gentle but filled with old wounds. You laughed at me. You pushed me away. You treated me like I was nothing. Aunt Sarah wiped her eyes, shaking with guilt. But, Ian said softly, I also know that holding anger forever only destroys the heart. The family looked up slowly. Hope, fear, guilt, all mixed together. Ein continued, "You were wrong. You hurt me. But I chose to help this family anyway." The uncle stood up, trembling. Ein, I don't deserve forgiveness. But I am begging you, don't take the company from us. Don't punish us. Ein's eyes softened. I'm not here to punish anyone. The uncle's mouth fell open. Ein looked around the table. I came here to change things. To fix what was broken. To make this family better than before. Farhan whispered, "So, what will you do?" Ein leaned back in his chair and spoke clearly. "I will keep my majority ownership. Because someone needs to protect the future." The uncle slowly nodded, accepting it. He had no power to fight anymore. Ein continued, "But I am not removing anyone from the company." A gasp spread across the room. No one is losing their job. No one is being thrown out. And nobody will be embarrassed the way I was embarrassed. Tears formed in Aunt Sarah's eyes. Farhan lowered his head in shame. Ein wasn't here to destroy them. He was here to rebuild them. But he wasn't finished. He stood up slowly, the first time he stood with true power in front of them. "I will create a new system," he said. "A system based on honesty, respect, hard work, and fairness." The cousins exchanged nervous looks but nodded. Ein continued, his voice stronger. "Anyone who works with honesty will stay." The family looked relieved. "But anyone who cheats, lies, or disrespects others will be removed." Their relief faded into seriousness. Ein walked around the table slowly. 4 years this company suffered because of pride and selfishness. That ends now. Today. His words were simple. But they carried weight. Real weight. A cousin spoke quietly. "Ein, what about Uncle? Will he still be the chairman?" Ein turned to the uncle. The room went silent. The uncle looked broken but honest for the first time. "Ein, you decide. I will accept whatever you say." Ein studied him for a long moment. Then he said, "You will not be removed." Shock filled the room again. "But," Ein continued, "you will step down as chairman. You will stay in the company but not as a leader." The uncle nodded slowly. "I understand, and I accept." Ein placed a gentle hand on his uncle's shoulder. "No more shouting. No more insults. No more treating people like they are less." His uncle's voice broke as he whispered, "I'm sorry, Ein." For the first time in his life, Ein believed those words. He turned to the rest of the family. "I want all of us to grow together. To succeed together. But this time with respect." A cousin spoke softly. "And you? What role will you take?" Ein inhaled deeply. 4 years I stayed silent. Now, I will no longer hide." He looked around the room and his voice was clear, calm but powerful. "I will be the new chairman." No one argued. No one protested. They all accepted it. Because they knew he deserved it more than anyone. Mr. Daniels smiled with pride. The uncle stepped forward suddenly. He placed the company's gold pen, the symbol of leadership, into Ein's hand. "You earned this," he said quietly. "More than any of us ever did." Ein held the pen tightly. The weight of it felt heavy. But right. The cousins stepped forward one by one. "Ein, we're sorry. We should have believed in you. You didn't deserve what we did." Ein looked at them with a soft, genuine smile. "It's in the past now. Let's start fresh." For the first time in years, the family finally stood together. Not as people divided by ego and pride, but as people united by truth and growth. Ein looked at his reflection in the glass window. A boy once mocked for having nothing, now stood as a man who had everything: wealth, strength, power, and finally respect. But the real victory wasn't the money. It wasn't the company. The real victory was that he stayed kind, even when the world wasn't kind to him. And now he was leading a new future. A future he built with his own hands. A future he would lead with fairness.